Thank you, Dr. Yopi. Yes, well, we're very excited about the launch. And yeah, hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. Like I said, genomics is a hot topic and it's a confusing one at the moment. So hopefully some of this makes a little bit more sense. There's also a prize to be won for the person who asks maybe the most questions or the best questions. We'll see how it goes. So please, as we're going along, put questions in the chat box and we'll try to answer as we go along. We're really excited to have you all here, and any questions, post them as we're going along. So thanks, guys. Enjoy.
Good day. I'm Thalia Bramelt, Technical Advisor at SA Studbook. Welcome to the launch of our latest genomic services at SA Studbook. We're so excited to have you all here and hope that we can give you a little bit more information today. Genomics is a hot topic at the moment, but it still leaves a few of us with a few questions and a little bit confused at times. You are a unique farmer and farming under unique circumstances in South Africa. Therefore, it is important that we benchmark and compare our animals to their own population, yet make sure that they remain internationally competitive. Today, with a group of my colleagues, we will be trying to explain to you a little bit more about these services and what makes them so unique. First, we will be looking at the genomics services, what makes them unique, and then the team behind these services, because it takes a great team to do these services. How do you apply them on the farm? And then what happens next after you've received your results? And if you'd like to participate, I will explain to you a little bit more about how that works. So first up, we'll have Dr. Yopi van der Westhuizen, who will tell us an overview of SA Studbook's genomics selection services. So over to you, Dr. van der Westhuizen.
Thank you very much, Thalia. Thank you very much for the opportunity to just sort of give a quick overview of Studbook's genomic selection services. And obviously the colleagues will then go a little bit deeper into what these services are all about, and also maybe the science behind it and how it can benefit the users of this very important service from Studbook. Obviously, it all starts with what we call a biological sample. The normal way of dealing with that is to pluck some hair from the animal's tail. You can also use maybe other biological materials such as semen and so forth. There's also a short video, I believe, that we will watch later on just a practical way on how to take these samples to be used for genomic testing. Why is this important? We know that the genetic code, or the so-called DNA, is embedded into each biological cell in an animal's body, and that's why something like hair root then works very well for a genomic test. Once you have the genomic profile of an animal, you can use that profile or the information in that profile for genetic improvement in your herd. And the big thing is all about the accuracy of breeding values, so that when you select an animal, that you know that the assessment of that animal as a parent, its breeding value, is accurately being used or calculated in the whole process. There's also some spin-offs, and I think the first spin-off is parentage verification, or even exploration of parents. If you have some animals in your database, or parents on your database with genomic profiles, it's possible to run through the database to ascertain which are the linked animals or the genetically related animals of that specific animal. We also know that there are some traits that are not influenced by the environment, so-called single gene traits. There are also, to a large extent, some markers on the genome that one can use to identify those animals that are carriers of wanted genes sometimes, or unwanted genes, but more will come later of that as well. So just in a nutshell, then by using genomic information, traits of economic value are then more accurately identified and assessed, and that assist farmers, commercial farmers and stud farmers, to get to their own breeding objectives faster or reach their goals faster. Thank you for the opportunity, Talia. I'm handing it over to you again, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. van der Westhuizen. I'd like to just remind you again that at any stage, if you've got any questions, we would really like to hear from you. We'll be discussing all the questions a little bit later at the end of this presentation. So for now, we'll go over to Jason Redding, geneticist at SA Studbook, who will be telling us a little bit more about what makes these services so unique. So over to you, Jason.
Hi there, my name's Jason Redding, and I work at SA Studbook, and today I'll just be giving you a short overview of what makes SA Studbook's genomics selection service unique. So the first line is that the breeder has ownership of the genomic data. This makes sense as the breeder is the owner of the animal, and that therefore any phenotypic and genetic information that is generated from that animal is thus the property of the breeder of that animal. An animal's production potential is assessed in conjunction with other animals that are producing within the South African environment. At SA Studbook, we also utilize complete pedigrees. There's no cap on the number of generations that are used, and this higher degree of ancestral information leads to a more accurate estimation of the animal's level of inbreeding, as well as its level of within breed relatedness, and allows for a better estimation of the animal's breed composition in comparison to other animals within that breed. The use of genomic information alone is not a true reflection of an animal's production potential. And thus, at SA Studbook, we include the phenotypic production recordings of female animals. We know that the phenotype is dependent on both the genotype and the environment that the animal is producing within. And then lastly, we have single genes, as Dr. Yapi had mentioned. We have favorable and unfavorable genes that an animal can carry. Favorable genes include beta-casein if it is a carrier of the A1 or A2 gene, as well as if the animal is horned or polled. And negative or unfavorable genes such as BLAD, DUMPS, Weaver syndrome, as well as a few of the haplotypes, which are known to cause embryonic death. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Now, to elaborate a little bit more on this, we have Dr. Bernice Mostert. Over to you, Dr. Mostert.
Thank you, Talia. From a more theoretical point of view, I would like to explain where does genomic information fits into our estimation of breeding values. Now, if we talk about economically important traits, that it's traits like production, fertility, and longevity, that's all traits that are influenced by quite a lot of genes, where every gene influences the expression of the trait. These traits, however, are also influenced quite a lot by the environment, so that it's difficult to know if an animal has a good measurement due to its own genetic potential or due to its influence of the environment in which the animal had to produce. But with statistical procedures, we try to estimate the genetic potential of the animal for a trait as accurately as possible. Now, the sources of information which we need to do this is, of course, the measurement of the animal, as much measurements of that animal's relatives that were measured in different herds and in different years, and then pedigree information that links all the related animals' information together. With these two sources of information, we can estimate the genetic parameters of the population. This is the heritabilities and the genetic correlations amongst traits, which is unique for the population for which it has been estimated. This means that genetic parameters of the South African population is not comparable to that of, for instance, the USA population, because these two populations were subjected to different selection intensities and different selection objectives over many, many generations. So with these three sources of information, we then estimate the breeding values of the animals as accurately as possible. Now on the next slide, where does genomic information fit into this picture of estimation? Now, we use genomic information to determine the genomic relationships between the animals that have been genotyped. This means that we can determine exactly which parts of the genome is being shared by the animals that were genotyped. And this enables us then to estimate these breeding values much more accurately, especially for the young animals that has not been measured yet, but they are now genomically related to animals that have been measured already. In the next slide. So in South Africa, we do these genomic evaluations now by using a single-step genomic evaluation, which is currently the state-of-the-art methodology being used all over the world for the estimation of genomic breeding values. But we still need measurements of our animals because we have to relate this genetic code to the expression of the genes within the population where these breeding values are going to be implemented. We also still need pedigree information for the animals that have not been genotyped, and we need our own population's genetic parameters to estimate the genomically enhanced breeding values. That is why SA Studbook's breeding values, genomic breeding values, are so relevant and so precise for our breeders. We can supply them of genomic rankings of their animals within their herds and within their own population, which is the most accurate information that they can have. Thank you, Talia.
Thank you, Dr. Bernice. Now, you've heard a little bit about Dr. Bernice, and she is part of an amazing team. And it takes a team of amazing people to make sure that we stay internationally competitive and world-class. So now we've got over to Rian Kruger, who is from the Eastern Cape, to tell us a little bit more about the team behind these tests. Over to you, Rian.
Thank you, Talia. So yeah, there's 5 beautiful smiles on the right-hand side of your screen. So that is the team behind SA Studbook's Genomic Evaluation Service. Among them, there's a lot of knowledge about genetics, as they are the registered genetics and operate internationally, representing both ICAR and Interbull. So having a look at the photos, starting at the top left side, we have Dr. Bobby van der Westhuizen. Next to him, Dr. Elena Tron. Next to the flower is Tunay Creer. Then at the bottom left is Dr. Bernice Mostert, and next to her is Jason Redding, who just completed his master's degree successfully. This team is also internationally accredited. They are the reason why SA Studbook can be on the forefront when it comes to genomic evaluation, nationally and internationally. Yeah, thank you, Talia.
Thank you, Ron. So yeah, now you've met the team, and there's somebody else who's, I'm sure most of you have also met along the way. She is Surieta Francis, Specialist Advisor, who's going to tell us a little bit more about how do you use these services on the farm. Thank you, Surieta.
Thank you, Talia, and hi to everybody. Yeah, I know you got a lot of information already. So my job is today to just explain in layman terms what exactly the genomic test can practically give you on farm level. So yeah, you might ask the question, genomic testing is costing me a lot of money. So what do I get back? And what is my return on investment? Well, as a breeder, you can use the genomic results as a management or a breeding tool. So the first point that we're going to discuss is we can identify the animal's own genetic potential accurately at a younger stage. You can apply precision breeding. Just go back one slide, sorry, Thalia. You can be selecting breeding animals accurately. You can identify the genetic method that will be carried over to the next generation. It also indicates the impact that the animal will have on the next generation. And then, of course, faster genetic improvement. So in the next slides, we will discuss this point with you. So if we have a look at these two pictures, the one is on the left-hand side is what we use at the current BLUP evaluation. You will see that the first breeding values that you get is the parent average and some measurements. But as you know, the bull's traits only get measured on his daughters. So it's only a generation later that the daughters in the offspring improves the accuracy. So the first accuracy or reliability is about 30%. If we go to the offspring added, then it goes up to 60%. But with the genomic BLUP evaluation that was discussed by Dr. Bernice Morstead, you will see that if we add the genomic data, the accuracy or reliability goes up to 54%. And if you think back a few years ago, it will take 5, 6, 7 years maybe for a bull to reach that accuracy. But importantly, we also still need production recording, all the traits to get a higher reliability, as this genetic selection is just another tool to use to get faster genetic progress. So we can go to the next slide. So where to now? At SA Statbook, we've got a web-based breeding program that is sadairyBulls.com. Now on this program, we've got lots and lots of information. So I'm just going to go through 2 examples with you of the information that is available. If we go to individual animal search, I'm going to look up 2 bulls, but I'll discuss the one first. If we have a look at this bull was born in December 2019. But if we have a look at the reliability, it's already at 48%. Why is this? You will see at the top of the page that this bull was genomically tested. So this is proof that if you genomically test an animal, you will get a higher accurate or reliability early in life. So selection can take faster. Next slide. Right, the next information that we've got, Jason has already spoken about it and just touched a little bit on it. You can see on the parentage verification, you will see whether the dam and the sire was genomically tested and verified. In this case, you can see both the parents were verified and genomically tested. So this also improves the reliability of the bull itself. Then, as I said, Jason spoke about traits that's not influenced by the environment. That is the traits that we call single gene traits. He's spoken about haplotypes, that's the fertility traits, and that's not desirable, as the fetus will die off if it receives both the sets of the gene from his parents. So that's like the haplotype 1 to 7. We've got the blads and the dumps. Then we've got also a gene that is DCAT. That is for butterfat production, that enhances butterfat production. But on the other side, it might bring down your milk production a little bit. Jason touched a bit on the polledness of the animal. Then there's yellow milk fat that's also available. And then the Weaver syndrome. Then the one that is more desirable, as Jason already said, is the A2 milk. If you can see, this bull is A1, A2. So yeah, it is a carrier of one of the genes. And then we see that the breed relatedness is also given. So you can see how related the bull is to the genetic population of that specific breed and the level of homozygosity. So that is just your genetic variation in your breed of the animal then. Right, the next bull you will see is an older bull. It's a 2010 bull. And the reliability is already at 98%. You will see that there is already 184 daughters that has been measured. So if we look at the next slide, you will see that the sire was genomically tested and verified, but not the dam. All right. You will also see this bull is a carrier of Jersey haplotype 1 that is not desirable. So on farm level, if we go to the selection of the bulls, you will try not to select bulls that is the carrier of Jersey haplotype 1 or any of the other haplotypes. But if you look at the A2 milk, he's a carrier of both the alleles A2 and A2. So where the other one was A1, A2, this one is A2, A2. So practically you can go and select bulls that's not carriers of the less desirable genes, and you can select for the desirable genes as well. If we look at the genomically enhanced breeding values, you will see that this bull's figures is a bit lower than expected, but if you think back, this was the older bulls. So we made genetic progress in the meantime. So the younger bull's figures will look better than this bull. But this gives you a nice overview of what the bull is going to breed. The milk, the protein, the solids, calving interval, and then your herd life as well. Oh, the next slide is very important. We get the pedigree information on SA dairy bulls as well. It will go back to as many generations that is on SA dairy bulls. Then you will ask why this is important. As previously mentioned, inbreeding is very much important for your herd fertility and then your calf livability as well. But in the genomic era, you know that a bull is still in test and then his sons already comes through. So the inbreeding is accelerating much faster than in previous years we went through a program before a bull was tested. Next slide. Then this is also quite a nice tool that's on SA dairy bulls. You can look up an animal and see in one glance what the animal will do as a breeding parent, sire or dam. You will see their selection indices, like for instance, the Jerseys use the cyanet and then choose merit, but there's also production traits, fertility and longevity traits, linear type traits, the structural as well as the udder. So you will know what that animal will carry over to the next generation. Okay, after each blood run, the breeder receives a genetic report that I'll quickly just show you the main important things that's in there, and that is used on a practical level on farm. So the first slide is about the genetic windows. What we've got here is the cows with measurements, the size of the cows, we've got the heifers, and then the size of the heifers. So what can you see? You can quickly have a look and see whether your heifers is doing better genetically than your cows. Are you showing improvement? And then as well, the bulls that you're using, are they the right bulls to use on your heifers to bring about genetic progress? Right, the next slide is also a lacquer one. It's the genetic levels of the cows and heifers. In this table, we give you the average of your herd, the average of your cows as well as your heifers, but importantly, we also give you the average of the breed. So you can benchmark yourself against the breed. So you can see on your cows and your heifers whether you're improving, and then where you stand next to the breed. So you know whether you're going in the right direction or not. And then also, as I said previously, you can have a look at the bulls that you're using. You can see, are they the right bulls? And then the other thing that's practical that you can use in that slide is just to see the traits that you need some improvement on and put a selection index on that. This slide shows you the genetic trends or the herd history per trait, as well as the breed average. So you can benchmark yourself once again, but you can also see your genetic progress over time. It's nice to have it on one page and just have at one glance and see what is going on in your herd. Right, as we said, you get the genetic values, breeding values for individual animals, that's your bulls as well as your cows. Now on these lists, we give the indices as well as the breeding values with their reliability. So why is this important? This is important to select animals, as we said, and it's possible if you do genomic tests to do this selection at a younger age and a higher reliability. So if you need to do selection on your heifers, you can select the right heifers at a younger age with a higher reliability, and this might even save you money on heifer rearing if you've got excess heifers that you need to sell, so you know which heifers you need to select and which ones you can sell off. Right, the last one is just a summary of the single gene traits that we talked about that's not influenced by the environment. That is your A2, your beta-casein, your milk, yellow fat, and then your blads and dumps and your haplotypes. So why do we need this? This we need to have a look at, as I said, to do precision breeding, to select animals that is not carriers of like the Jersey haplotype 1, or animals that is beta-casein, that's the A2 milk. So that helps you on a practical level just to make sure that you don't select for unfavorable genes. So next, Dr. Helena will explain to us why it is also important to do genomic testing, because there might be two full sisters that has got different breeding values where we would suspect that they would have almost the same breeding values on a parent average. So Helena, I'll give over to you now.
As Surieta said, here we have the genetic profiles of two full sisters, meaning they have the same sire and the same dam. Both of them were genotyped and they were performance tested. If we look at the F values, which is the inbreeding coefficients based on the pedigree, both sister 1 and sister 2 are 8.46% inbred. The homozygosity values are very close together, and the reliabilities of the GEBVs are the same, 73%. But then if you look at the A2 milk, we see the one sister is A2A2, while the other one is A1A2, meaning one of the parents have the one A1 allele. And with the Jersey haplotype 1, there's also differences. The one's a carrier and the other one's clean. If we look at the these bar graphs of the breeding values, you'll see that there's also differences. The one sister looks very much more promising than the other sister. So how does this happen? If we look at the milk value, breeding value, the mother is 92 on milk and the sire is 113 on milk, which means the parent average is 102.5. And now we see that the one sister, quite by chance, got more genes like her dam, while the other one is closer to her sire. And that's an effect that we call Mendelian sampling. It's just simply random which genes they get and with which they can perform then. So the effect of Mendelian sampling is that one will only know this once the cow is in performance testing. But by genotyping her within the population, you can already at a very young age see her genes, whether she got more genes from her better parent or from a poorer parent, and make a decision much earlier in her life And that's very beneficial, especially in the case of bulls. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Helena. And thank you, Surietta Francis. As you can see, yeah, now you've got a whole lot of information. We've supplied you with a lot, and you've done the genomic testing and performance testing. But now what's next? What comes after that? And what do you do with all this information and put it all, how do you put it all together? So now we'll go over to Chanel Steenkamp from the Western Cape, who will tell us a little bit more about how do we put this all together. Thank you, Chanel.
Yes, thanks, Talia. Yeah, I'm going to try and do my best to let the farmers and everybody understand, to bank all this that all the colleagues have spoken about, to do and what to do next. So, so what happens next now with all of this in mind? So the question to ask is, what or who determines your selection index, your breeding goals? As we have heard from my colleagues, that there is difference in environment, that the environment and the economic value traits will determine your selection index. So the point here is to understand that only your females, the cows and the heifers on your farm, can ultimately determine your selection index. Nobody can tell you really what it should be. Only those females can. So by this, their production recordings, which we refer to as milk recording, will be their true identification of their worth on your farm. So a practical part to break this up is into two, with daily information, which is a portion that you get from your milk programs like your Africams, your Delpros, etc. Is like your lactation information, your daily milk yields that comes in, or your production info that you allocate to your animals, like AIing, and when you do any, how can I say, if you call them or so, all that production recordings, that is part of one information that you can use to identify what your standard is in your herd. The other part is the milk sample that can only indicate like your somatic cell counts, your MUNs, your butterfat and proteins. And I particularly mentioned this because you can't use a bulk tank sample to see the variation in your herd if you only use a bulk tank sample, because this all needs to be allocated individually, as your animals are individuals. Okay, so the reason why I'm mentioning this as well is because you must ask yourself, what does it cost you to produce your product? For instance, if you produce your milk is produced highly on butterfat and you get paid on butterfat, and on the one hand you don't do you don't take milk samples to see what variation in your herd is representing, your females are representing, and you get paid for butterfat, but you can't really see what your females are really doing. So how do you select how do you go and forward if you don't know that values? And the same goes for your milk yield. If you don't log or keep records of milk yields and you're just interested in getting the tank full, that's not really a true reflection of those females are really producing the milk to their full potential. So that is going to affect your selection index of just to what does it cost you to produce your product in that perspective. The next question I could ask myself is, what does it cost you to treat an animal for mastitis, or looking at health rates in a whole of your immunity of your animal? Again, these kind of traits are allocated to the information in the production part of what you record. So keeping all this in mind, this is how you can go about and to really see what will determine your selection index. So Talia, you can move on, you can go to the next slide, because ultimately having all these records on hand, and this is where you're bringing in genomics to ultimately to increase this accuracy of all this data, you can actually identify or pull up a list to see a selection list to ask yourself, what does it cost to raise a heifer because now you want to raise this heifer, but you have no information really going forward to allocate to her. So having a selection list that we work from with our clients at SA Studbook, which is a cool tool, because now you can start sorting. You can sort on either on your selection indexes or your breeding values, and which is quite cool because they allocated in the color coding, so you have a quick glance to see are these animals above breed average, are they the below or the top bottom 10% of the breed. So this is a very cool tool to select heifers that can guide you how to breed forward. So this principle applies to your cow selection too. Having data about your cows, especially the first lactation production data, which is highly correlated with the later lactation, you can identify even bull mothers or your next top dams of dams for your herd to breed forward with. So this is the tool, applies the same as the heifer. Thanks Talia. And then ultimately the question is, so now you know ultimately what your baseline is of your females. Now you must go and get relevant bulls that's on the same breeding values that your females have set for you, to go find bulls to either for better, your next generation. And as Sarita has mentioned in depth, to go and look at bulls that are genomically tested, to be able to use them in your breeding on your farm. Again, I just want to point out, because you can't use a bull that is not based on your breeding selection index goal. So using genomically tested bulls can help you improve the accuracy of your breeding quicker. So I hope this was a lot to ruminate on, to what to do next on farm with the genomics. Thanks, Talia.
Wow, thank you, Chanel. So, yeah, like I said, a lot of information, but it's so practical and it's so relevant right now, and it's really what is happening. And I hope it makes sense how you can improve your herd with all this information. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about how to actually take part in SA Studbook's genomic services, it's very simple. You take a hair sample of the animal, send it through to Studbook, and within 6 weeks of us receiving it, we should be able to give you your results. Price, I know that's on all of your lips at the moment. Please, we have a whole team of technical advisors who would like to give you your unique quotation on your farm. And also, all our advisors are quite capable to help you take a sample, and if you are feeling a little bit nervous about that. But Dr. van der Westhuizen will also show us now a little bit of a video exactly how it works on the farm and how to take a sample. We also have 2 farmers who are currently using the genomic services on their farms and who would love to just give us a bit more information on how they do it on the farm. So we're really thankful to have you guys all here today. And like I said, please, you've still got a few more minutes to throw in those questions in the chat box. We'd love to have a chat with you guys. It's a really informal setting tonight. We just want to chat to you and make sure that you understand genomics. And we're really glad that we are able to have this technology and that we're in the era of such wonderful tools that can help us with our selection and going forward. So thank you very, very much for your time and spending this time with us. We really appreciate it. Keep well, and we'll chat to you again. Thank you.
For listening to this. We will now proceed. As Talia said, we've also recorded 2 separate interviews with dairy farmers, making use of genomic information in their selection process. The first one up is Pete Durham. Pete is also on tonight listening. It's him with the blue smoke around him as he puffs his pipe when he was still showing on the pictures. So if you allow me to try the technology again and see if I can get that going. In the meantime, thanks a lot for all the different questions. It's excellent questions. I think the guys are surpassing the previous group with the quality of questions. Thanks for that. We also have Prof. Esti and Dr. Karina Visser from Turkish on tonight, and Dr. Heinz, welcome as well. So we have the clever people here that can assist us to try and answer these questions as well, especially the difficult one about epigenetics. So let's see what happens when we get to that part. So if you allow me to, then I'll try to get the next one going. My interview with Pete Durham of KZN. Today I have the privilege of talking to Pete Durham, a well-known dairy farmer in KZN and also Jersey breeder. Pete, very welcome to this short interview.
Thank you, Pete.
Pete, obviously this is all about the launching of a genomic service for dairy cattle in South Africa, and as you are aware, StatBook is launching this, and by including genomic information in our breeding value predictions. So the first question would be, or just your opinion on how do you think the breeders will ultimately, or the milk producers in a wider spectrum, will benefit from this new development?
I think that the reality around agriculture is one of the key drivers in terms of improving productivity has always been technology. It has been, and it will continue to be, one of the primary drivers. The advantage I see in the genomics is to get a more accurate indication of the breeding value of your particular animals that you have. The challenge, obviously, for the commercial farmer, which even though one's may necessarily be a stud breeder, there's got to be a cost benefit. And the general rule around technology is, as the greater adoption takes place of a technology, the price normally is driven down, or you get a multiplying effect in terms of what you get for the same rand value. Our challenge is really about the cost benefit, because that's going to be the real driver in terms of using a technology. And the way I see it is, when one gets to capacity and you're in a position where you have got surplus progeny being born on the farm, then one needs to be in a position to be able to select and retain the better percentile of those progeny for the future of the herd. The other side, which I think has enormous potential, is the whole thing around health traits. I don't think it's all about production anymore. I think the health traits, in terms of fertility, productive life, udder health, those are going to be the key issues of the future. There's going to be a lot more pressure on dairy farmers and intensive animal production systems to reduce the usage of antibiotics, and that alone is going to require us to have healthier animals and healthier productive systems.
Thank you, Pete. You know, I think what makes this thing different to maybe some other, products that's available elsewhere is the fact that we've basically built this from StatBook's perspective on a reference population, a South African reference population, where we use genotypes of bulls that obviously had recorded progeny in South Africa, and also recorded females in South Africa. Do you consider this to be an important aspect in the application of this technology or genomic selection, as far as you're concerned?
One of the big challenges has always been, how do you actually take a number of technologies that have improved and been developed in other countries and applying them into your own circumstances. When genomics first got launched, we as South Africa, we didn't have access to that technology. And I think it was one of the main primary reasons for the demise of the studs like Taurus and so forth. They had a 5-year moratorium on access, and the adoption of genomics has become unilateral. The genetic advancements and the speed at which the genetics are being made available, tested and are made available to the world is of such a nature that genomics is here to stay. The real question is how applicable are the results in other countries and to our population. So in the jerseys, for example, there's quite a high correlation between Denmark and South Africa, the genetic population, and America and South Africa. But it's still, South Africa has its own unique population. And for it to really start working, we need to have something that's correlated, more closely correlated to our own population. I think the one thing that is going to drive or become the first key driver in terms of commercial farms is going to be the whole issue with inbreeding. I think we're all getting to the point where the inbreeding and managing of inbreeding is becoming extremely difficult because of the speed at which genetics has become available. Unfortunately, to a large extent, genomics has also resulted in a lot of closely bred, and the population diversity is getting smaller, which makes it even more difficult. So all these factors all add up to challenges that we're going to all face in the future. Challenges of the cost of rearing a heifer today. I was looking at some data. It's in the region of 20,000 Rand for a Holstein heifer. And if you take into account mortalities and so forth, even mortalities in the first lactation, it goes to 24,000 Rand to raise a heifer. You cannot afford anymore to invest in poor genetic potential animals, where the return on investment is, you're paying 24,000, and if you've got surplus animals, those surplus animals are probably market value of around about 15,000. I'm talking about in the Holstein context, 15, 16,000. So there's just no ways you can afford to raise poor genetic potential animals. It's just too expensive relative to their return. Back to you, Yapi.
Thank you, Pete. I think you basically answered my last question. In terms of how do you decide what technologies to use and what to just sort of don't focus on. And I think you, to a large extent, has answered the question of how do you see this being used in the future. I don't know if you have something else to say on this.
Well, Yapi, if you take into account the cost of things, I mean, semen depends on what quality semen you buy. It varies between 100 and 200 Rand a straw, and you're looking at rule of thumb 5 straws to get a heifer into the boiler. So you're looking at roughly, call it 800 to 1,000 Rand that you're investing in genetics. Secondly, so the 800 Rand roughly, which it currently costs, is pretty much on par with what you're investing in semen anyway. But that is a minor cost. I think semen is in the region of well, call it 1,000 Rand out of 24,000. The real cost is the cost of rearing that animal, and feed is the major component of that. So by being able to select prior to investing all that money is a critical aspect of it. And ultimately, it gives you more confidence in retaining progeny from those animals in the future by doing those initial selection. So and it all depends on your goals in terms of what you're going to choose, your breeding goals in terms of what you're going to choose as your genetic characteristics which you're going to prefer to have in your herd. But I think that we're going to get to the point, or we already got to the point where one's got to look at technology as a tool to invest, so that we're investing in the right animals for our particular circumstances. How it is adopted is another question. The reality is it's there, and one needs to look at technology and say, how does it benefit me and my business, and what cost benefit return? And that's why I sort of brought this issue up in terms of the rearing costs, because it's a hidden cost for dairy farmers. They don't see it, but they're investing it in every day. And you know, those animals, to spend that amount of money and then not get what you want is a seriously big cost and of the dairy business today.
Thanks very much, Pete. I really appreciate your time and also the example that you set in using technology in your own herd and in breeding dairy cattle, and also I think the way that you anticipate things to happen in terms of economics and how you apply that in your herd. Like I said, thanks very much for your time and good luck for the future. I think luck comes from being practical and using the information and the technologies at your disposal well. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Willing to be interviewed in that. We have another interview that Chanel, our technical advisor from the Western Cape, did with Rob Visser, I think. Yeah, Rob, one of the best cheesemakers in the country as well. There's not many pictures on that, but I think it's a very interesting interview, and also gives them perspective from someone that actually utilizes the milk in the production chain as a cheesemaker. And I think it's also giving a fresh perspective on things as far as.
Rob, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to me about our the genomic service tool that we're launching. I am so privileged and always so excited when I see the name Dalewood and drive past your farm there in Franschhoek on the Simondium Road in the Cape Winelands. It is in such a beautiful part of our country. I know that you are a second-generation farmer on with this Jersey herd there, and I know you are very much actively involved in every part of the farming, from the soil. I know your heart lies very deeply there with the soil, from how the soil even produces and what feed your animals and the Jersey herd eats. And I do appreciate that from you. I know you are a very much in detailed farmer, and ultimately the quality of milk you produce. I'm always so excited to see your stats of how your cows are performing. So I know your Jerseys are in very good condition and very much healthy, and a very happy herd, if I can put it like that. A happy cow won't produce as well as your Jerseys do. And then obviously you are in a position where you do produce your own cheese as well. The chain doesn't stop there with the lorry taking the the milk away, but it actually stays on farm. You are a prestige acclaimed award winner of your cheese. You are, the products I know were also, one of your products was a Jersey International Cheese of the Year. Rob, it's always such a pleasure with your new products on the market that I got the privilege of indulging in, with your on-farm milk and the butter and the yogurts. You're just adding to your collection. I know Dries, your manager on farm there with you, is such a pleasure to work with as well, and also very dear to your farm and your practices there. It's such a pleasure to get to know you and your family in the many years to come, and to see what else you guys are delivering on farm. But back to today's ultimate questions of just wanting to tickle your mind and just to hear your perspective on how your take is on not just milk recording and your business, but also ultimately using this technology, this tool, the genomic testing we have on farm. So Rob, I would really like to hear how you have been using your milk recording data thus far on the farm.
Thanks, Chanel. Thanks for including me, and thanks to your team. I'd just like to start off by saying fantastic support, very professional, that you've given us over the years. I'm very excited for the years ahead, and for the journey that we're going to walk together and have improved breeding going forward. The milk recording, just to start off with, has, builds up a database, a history of a cow, which is so important, because you can just with a click go back and see how she's done last lactation and the previous lactation. And it's often the case that a cow does go up and down. Often you can have a very good lactation, and then the next lactation it does take a bit of a bump for various reasons, maybe difficult calving, or slight imbalances, or liver problems. But the milk recording, number one, is a fantastic thing to have on the data base. And then, of course, it linking in with the actual groundwork that Jersey SA does for us with evaluating the cows on the ground is such a nice combination when it all comes together. That's fantastic. MUNs I find really great to work with. When we do find high levels of protein, especially when the clovers are high in protein, it's nice to know when you get a bit of a spike, and you can adjust your ration slightly with your slightly lower protein so that you don't have excess MUNs. SST is hugely valuable, especially the history, picking up the cows that are carriers. And then also, the aspect of going through all the data with you in a more forensic way. Often the program is huge and we don't utilize it to the full extent, and that's where you come in and you give us your reports, and Sharetta gives us the reports. So in every aspect, as far as a management tool is concerned on the farm, it's been hugely valuable to us.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Rob. I know having more than 20 years of data of your animals, it's a very good groundwork that you have of your animals, and the breeding lines of your females that helps a lot for that accuracy. So it's a pleasure to always work with your data. So yeah, Rob, keeping that all in mind, what determines your breeding goals?
Well, I've said to you in the past that I have some serious. I'm a serious fan of some of the breeders in the past, like Hugo de Villiers, who bred just opposite us, up against the Paarl Mountain. Skoongezicht being another one, and Tieflei being another one that have bred incredible herds. And these were very fine stockmen that absolutely had a feel and an eye for a good, specifically in our case, a Jersey cow, and were able to select and build a herd with a very very good balance, and this came from the stockman side. But I mean, yes, I love a balanced cow. I think that is definitely a breeding goal of mine, to have a cow that fits in with our specific terrain and our specific type of farming, which is walking quite a bit. So we're not a TMR herd. We walk to the pastures, and they probably walk in approximately maybe 2 kilometers a day. So that's important, that the cows are able to walk, and that the cows are able to graze. So that's also a breeding goal, that the cow has a slightly smaller frame, not a very large, dare I call it a TMR type of frame, a slightly smaller frame, more compact. So as far as the phenotype is concerned, a cow that is very kind on the eye is for any stockman a goal. The economic values are so important. That's where we pick up on all the information that we get off the data coming out of Studbook is so important for economic profitability. So breeding a cow that has the ability to produce milk, that has the ability to convert feed into milk, that has the ability to produce good fats, that has the ability to produce good proteins, that has the ability to be fertile, that has longevity. Those are all very important economic values, which definitely do form part of my breeding goals, so as to speak.
No, most definitely, Rob. I would love you to please elaborate on that economic values. Specifically, you, like I said, in a fortunate role, say for instance, your jerseys are at a butterfat of say 4.8%, and just practically what it would take from a breeding goals perspective of knowing what economic value it would have for you as a cheesemaker, knowing if it is perhaps a 5 or a 5.2% butterfat. Would you elaborate on that practical part for me, what that difference could make or break for you financially?
Yeah, the fact when you're making cheese, depending on what style of cheese you make, obviously some styles of cheese have got more moisture on them, so you get yields out of inclusion of moisture, in other words, holding back some of your whey in the curds. But if you're making hard cheese, you can roughly speak about 10%. So 100 liters of milk will produce 10 kilograms of cheese. And this is directly relates to the solids. So the solids in the form of protein, which is generally around about 3.7, butterfat, which is around about 4.8, lactose, which is also part of the solid makeup, obviously changes during the cheese making process and goes to lactic acid, and is a percentage of that is lost in the whey. But rands and cents, if you can increase your butterfat by say 1%, it's an extra kilogram of cheese. So you can move from 10 kilogram yield in 100 liters of milk to 11 kilograms, and that, say your cheese selling at 80 rand a kilo, is 80 cents a liter. So it's very quick, direct money return if you can achieve your high butterfats and your high proteins. Obviously, milk volumes make up for that sum as well, are definitely part of the sum. So, but we often find you know, the milk production drops and the cheese production increases. So that's quite an interesting one. As the cows are later in lactation, they produce higher butterfats and definitely give better yields. So with high production of milk, you obviously get less cheese, if that makes any sense to you. It is often like that. So when the milk production drops slightly, it doesn't really affect our yields in the cheese factory. So we're not driven to produce necessarily volumes of milk. Yes, volumes do play a very important role, but solids are more important for us. So the protein and fat is almost, I would say, if I had to put a percentage to it, maybe 60-40. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's why I'm asking you to elaborate, because I think for a lot of the farmers that's not involved in this whole view of the production of what it actually, not just at their end of when the milk tanker leaves to what actually the product will cost them for at the end for the milk. It's the buyers. That whole chain, they don't always see that. So that's why it's so important when you can relate back to when there's because a lot of the farmers do get incentive if the butterfats are higher or if the milk production is higher or so. And I think that's why I'm just asking you to mention when you look at that directly, how it can affect your breeding goal if you don't select for that, for instance. If you're not getting paid for certain things, you can't really breed towards something if you don't know what it's going to cost you financially as well. So no, thanks for that, Rob. Okay, so Rob, why would you use this technology of the genomic testing to improve your milk recording values?
Why would I use this technology?
Yeah, why would you use this tool of technology by genomic testing your animals, on farm?
I think it's going to give me the data that I need to make decisions on which heifers I would use to bring back into the herd, definitely. So it's going to really speed up the excellence of the herd. So having the genomic data, say, on all my female animals, as well as the genomic data available mostly on the bulls, but having all that genomic data available is just going to definitely influence my progeny selection. I think it's absolutely incredible to know whether that cow or that heifer that you've got has the ability to produce very good levels of fat or very good levels of protein or good milk production. So I've just mentioned the three most things that are probably the most important as far as profitability is concerned, but obviously longevity and fertility and all those things come into it. So critical for selection of progeny in the herd. I would say that's rands and cents back in your pocket within a year or two after selection. So you can really whittle down exactly the heifers you want to keep, and maybe the ones that are not as good you could possibly put on the market. But that really gives you a leapfrog in breeding, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely, Rob. I know you have tested a few of your own bulls genomically through our service, and you have participated on a big scale on the GDP project, genotyping your females, your older reference population for the reference population project. And I know that going forward, this is definitely a tool, like you said, with the heifers to go and identify them now, because your data is so complete, to practically use that on farm. So Is there? Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Rob, for answering these questions. I just it would be always great to hear from a farmer's point of view, how they view it and going forward, and obviously making it practical on farm for your business. Yeah, Rob, is there anything else you would like to add? Any thoughts on the genomic testing from your side otherwise?
Yeah, very excited about the Kappa-Casein or the A2A2 probability of the herd. I know that the bulls I tested were both positive for the favorable protein in the milk. This is a big trend in Europe, and there's obviously scientific proof that the protein is far more digestible and far more sought after in the market. So here's holding thumbs. What we did originally when I took over from my father was we've got basically 3 female lines. Whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, I'm not sure, but we've been a closed herd since day one. And those original cows, one came from Skoongezicht and another from Elsenburg and another from Helderberg, I think, which were good herds in our area. And those 3 lines obviously had good A2A2 levels. So very excited about that. I know that we're going to have a meeting about that, and hopefully we've got a strong presence of A2A2, and we can use that as a marketing tool in our products going forward.
Yeah, no, most definitely a hot topic on a lot of consumers' lips. But yeah, thanks so much, Rob. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else from my side. Rob, I think yeah, thanks for these questions again that we could answer. I think it was you did well. Thank you very much for that. Is there anything else you think from the top of your head that you would also want to add, that you maybe think you missed on?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about breeding, and it was a very interesting trip. We were taken over to the Danish breeding system, and Peter Larsen is in charge of the Jersey Danish breeding system, and I must say that I was very impressed with the uniformity and the cow type that I saw on the ground. And they were all, you could see that they all were Danish. Some absolutely magnificent animals. And I'm just very interested in, including the human factor in breeding as well. I firmly believe that there's a magic touch in a good stockman and a good breeder, and that all these genomic databases are fantastic tools to have, but I wouldn't like to disregard a good bull station's ability to breed the right type of animal that you might be looking for. So if you haphazardly go along and you stab here at a bull and stab there at a bull with high indexes, I don't always think you're going to get the results that you hope for, because your genetic pool is so important and so many other factors are so important. And so I think that's where, feet on the ground, your boots on, and an eye for the right sort of animal that you're looking for, and then very careful selection with the top genetic people that know what they're doing. So it's such a team. It's got to be a team. It's got to be a team effort. And I think if you think you can do it alone, you must think again. I think it's a very complex and a very difficult thing to breed a perfect herd or a fantastic herd. It's a wonderful journey. It takes a while, and I think with genomics that we have today, we've got this ability to actually make it happen a little bit quicker. So very exciting stuff. But Chanel, thanks so much for allowing me to chat, and
Thank you.
hopefully I haven't spoken too much.
No, thanks, Rob.
Okay.
I appreciate so much.
Good
Thank
luck.
you so much.
Okay, thank you, Chanel and Rob, for that interview. I think a very nice perspective, especially because of the fact that Rob is involved with cheese making. It also gives that interesting perspective. We have a short video. I tried my utmost, my hand at dubbing over. It was something that Puna did for us, Puna Fanika, just to show you quickly how to take a hair sample from a young calf and also a semen straw to be used as a biological sample for genotyping. So this is to illustrate how to take biological samples from cattle for genomic testing. The way to take tail hairs for genomic analysis is by taking a fairly substantial bunch of tail hair and plucking it against the grain. The most important part is there must be enough hair roots present from the hairs plucked and enough, obviously enough hair. Your hands must be clean to prevent cross-contamination from another animal. Put it in a paper envelope and make sure that close it properly and make sure that the particulars of the animal are written on the envelope. The ID number of the animal, the computer number, year of birth, sequence number, it's a female, the dam's particulars, the ID number, year of birth, the same particulars of the sire. And then obviously also the person who has taken the sample, the herd identification and the date that the sample was taken. Then also make sure that the check 100% that the right animal sample was taken in the first place. Semen can also be used as a sample, biological sample for genomic analysis. Frozen straw is then taken. In this case, the example is Bana's fastball, the bull. First make 100% sure it's the right bull's semen straw that's being used. This is then also placed in exactly this similar type of envelope. This semen does not need to be kept frozen as it contains adequate amounts of DNA. Make 100% sure that it is the right animal. Again, the identification of the animal, the sire, the dam, the breed, and also the person that took the sample and the date. Hopefully that just gives a quick glimpse into how to do it. Obviously, we can now go over to discussing the different remarks and questions. Unfortunately, Prof. Esty had to leave. She had another appointment. I would have liked her to make a few remarks as well. She's also been involved from the onset, the University of Pretoria, as part of the Dairy Genomics program that, like I said, the TIA funded. But maybe another time we can also have an interview with her. So Talia, you can kick off, and maybe we can try our hand at the epigenetics question of Pete, but that's the most difficult one. But let's give it a go. I think you can maybe allot any of your colleagues to assist with this process. Thank you, Talia.
Thank you, Dr. van der Westhuizen. Yes, so yeah, really excellent questions. So we're very excited to handle them. The first question came through from Pete Durham. What is the difference between the genomic program at SA Studbook and the one that Zoetis is currently offering and has launched? I think Dr. van der Westhuizen, if you'd like to handle that one.
I don't know, Pete, if this is a political question. It's difficult for me to elaborate on somebody else's product, and I'd rather not do that. what I will say is for us at StatBook, there are a few very important scientific principles involved in genomic selection. The first one is that you have to always predict a breeding value, and a breeding value is being defined as the value of an animal as a parent. That's just a short definition of a breeding value. You have to define a breeding value within the population that the animal has to produce offspring. That's the first principle. We always use the analog of if I were to produce progeny in let's say in China, I'll have an excellent breeding value for height, but that doesn't help me much because the population that I produce offspring in is in South Africa. So I need to be evaluated in the population that the breeding value is valid. So that is the first principle. So you have to build your reference population, and you have to use all the other information, the phenotypic information and the other pedigree information in the population that you have to do the prediction. So that to me is the most important point. Even in cases where you had smaller populations and you measured very difficult to measure traits such as immunity levels and so forth, you must still validate that in the population that the offspring is to be produced. So that's the principle of why we had the DGP, the Dairy Genomics Program in South Africa, and why we utilized, in the reference population, utilized animals with a lot of progeny in this in South Africa, so that we know what the expression of the genes would be in the local circumstances. So that's just in short. And like I said, I would not elaborate on somebody else's product, but that's the basis on which we try to build that. I think if you go back to Benice's talk, where she also talked about the genetic parameters, that's the heritabilities and the genetic correlations. That's population specific. It's not, you can't just use another population and try to extrapolate that on a South African population. That's very important.
Thank you, Dr. van der Westhuizen. And I think the second one also comes from Pete. He wants to know the effect of epigenetics on the expression of genetic potential of the animal, as this field has been found to have some profound influence on a lifetime production, particularly environmental and effect during the first 3 months of life. Now, this question, we had debated a bit about it, but I think Dr. van der Westhuizen, you would like to handle that one?
I wished Prof. Estie was still here. You will see that she has mentioned that in the chat box, and we can also make that available. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about what epigenetics really is. And if I talk to 5 scientists, I sometimes get 5 different answers. I think epigenetics originated from what happened to people during, I think, the First or Second World War, and there was a theory that the way you are treated in this generation will have a profound influence of what type of genes you carry over to the next generation. And so it's not a G by E, it's not a genetic by environmental interaction. It's rather how your transmitting ability would be influenced by the environment you're subjected to now. And I think that's a big thing. So Pete, I'm not going to answer that one maybe to the full extent, and maybe it's a good thing if we can ask the scientists and the theoreticists to assist us in maybe writing a nice article, and we can have it, we don't have the MBO people here, but maybe in the Dairy Mail or someplace so that we can keep on this debate going, because obviously there is such a thing as epigenetics, but I think we just need to clarify exactly what it is, and also then how it really influences our breeding in the future. I see Pete wants to say something, so Pete, let's give it a go.
Yes, Yapi. There was a very interesting a Zoom meeting that was on a presentation by a professor in in Europe the other day, last week in fact, on heifer rearing, and this epigenetics was brought up there. And the way I understood it, is how the genes are expressed, how they express themselves, and which ones get turned on and which ones aren't turned on. But the results that they got looked like there was quite a substantial difference in the way in the variation that the expression of the genes compared to how they were raised in the first months of age. And that's why I asked, we do all this genomics, and then we of those genes in the end. So that was the main motivation for my question.
Thanks, Pete. I think give us a chance to go and read up a little bit, and we'll come back to you as well. I think this is very important. It's also additive genes, so-called additive genes. So it's a multitude of genes, and some gets sort of knocked out or switched on in the process. So, but it's also about the transmitting ability. How the environmental constraints could have a pronounced influence on what's being transmitted. That's how the original definition of epigenetics was actually postulated, but it could also maybe one could actually follow on that as well.
Thank you, Pete. I hope that half answered your questions. Then we have a question from Harry. Is the South African reference population built with other countries other than South Africa, or exclusively from the South African registered animals? Dr. Bernice Morstead, would you like to give us a bit of information on that, please?
Thank you, Talia. No, we're of course including all bulls that have daughters in South Africa in our reference population. With the dairy genomics program, we genotyped as much international bulls with daughters in South Africa as we could get. And we of course hope, we hope really that the semen guys will contribute in future to our reference population, our local reference population, by supplying the South African genomic database with the genotypes of their bulls in future. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you can just also answer the next one for us too, please. That comes from Matthew. Do animals have to be registered to take part in this service? Dr. Bernice?
Matthew, we need to have the animal's information and logics, but it does not need to be registered. It doesn't need to be registered with the society, if that answers your question.
Talia, can I also just elaborate on that? Since one uses, it's been said in the presentation, we use a single step, which is basically a different type of approach as the initial approach where the relationship of parts of the chromosome was established with the expression of the genes. And by using a single step, one basically uses the genetic relationship amongst animals. That means that if you have an animal on the outside, if you can call it that, where you know little about the animal and you genotype that animal, immediately you get the relationship of that animal to the reference population. And that assists you to supply that animal with a genomic value. Obviously, the accuracy or the would not be as high as an animal closer to the reference population, and especially an animal with a whole lineage of measurements for that animal. So, but it's possible then, because we also work on so-called breed fractions, or the closeness of that animal to the purity of the breed, that assist one to make a prediction on the animal, irrespective of what you know about the animal. Obviously, if you take a hair sample from a Bonsmara and you want to push it into the Jersey prediction, it will be of no use. But if it's a Jersey type or a Holstein type, then at least you will get a fair, at least an assessment or a prediction of that animal, irrespective of whether it was recorded or not. Obviously, the more recordings you have on an animal, the more accurate your prediction.
Thank you, Dr. van der Westhuizen. The next question comes again from Pete Durham. He'd like to know, being a Jersey breeder, the SA Jersey registered population has quite a high correlation to the USA and Danish populations. How, or is there any usefulness from the data on predicting local related genetic potential? I'm not sure, is Dr. Bobby van der Westhuizen, is he available for this question maybe? Otherwise, Dr. Jaapie?
I think let's give Bobby a go. He's got that nice picture of his two hobbies, his music and doing vidblits. So maybe Bobby, you can come in on this.
Well, I can try. Maybe Bernice. So yes, it is closely related to population. So of course you can gain information, but I think it is from a scientific point of view, it is clear that you need to include that information also within the South African genomic, in the evaluation, the genetic evaluation runs. So yes, I think there is a great potential into using that. And of course, we are also part of Interbull, where we use the genetic correlations between that Interbull have estimated between countries that is taking part in those evaluations. And that is also included, of course, within the bigger genetic evaluation runs within South Africa. So to some extent, we already make use of that information in the local predictions to the genetic potential, and everything in a single step GBLUP model is all coming together.
Yes, I think I can add, Pete, if you can get us a Danish data, we will salute you, eh?
Yeah, I just think that, you know, the world's getting smaller and smaller, and certainly the genetic variations getting tighter. And so if you consider that we've got a close correlation between ourselves and the Danish, for example, is there potential of working together to increase the base population? I know they every closed in terms of giving information out, but I think, you know, as a population, all stocks now. That was my primary question.
Thank you, Pete. Now we'll go over to Harry's question. Is the inbreeding percentage calculated based on the pedigree of the animal? Dr. Bernice, maybe if you'd like to answer this one.
Yes, we still publish the, what we call the pedigree inbreeding coefficient. So we use the information as it is captured on Logix. We also present our breeders now with the genomic the homozygosity of the animals, which is related to the inbreeding. And we are still working on presenting our breeders with what they call the genomic inbreeding coefficient. So we want to present our breeders with that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bernice. Harry, I hope that answers your question. I don't know if there's anything more from your side.
Dalia, can I just, it's very interesting, the fact that you have the homozygosity, you know, if a Jersey looks like a Jersey and a Holstein looks like a Holstein, because of the fact that for centuries those animals were, related animals were bred together. So the problem we have generally, and this maybe is a theoretical thing, is that you can only calculate the inbreeding as far as your pedigree goes back. And that's a problem. So obviously the homozygosity tells you a little bit more, because it tells you about on the 2 chromosomes how many of those alleles are actually the same. So over centuries, how much inbreeding actually took place. Obviously, the rate of inbreeding is more important than inbreeding itself. So if you can counter the negative effects of inbreeding by selection, if it happens slowly over time. So it's very interesting that you could have 2 animals in terms, let's say you have 2 animals with a 20 generation pedigree, and you calculate the inbreeding, but the homozygosity can still be different due to something that happened more than 20 generations ago. But that's just for interest sake, maybe.
Thank you, Dr. van der Westhuizen. Harry, does
Can I
that
ask a
answer
question?
Yeah.
So you've got 2 a pair of twins, okay? Theoretically, if you take into account their pedigree, then they are got the same inbreeding. But because of their genetic makeup and the random selection, there could be quite a big variation, well, not a big one, but there could be variation between the 2 in terms of the actual inbreeding. Is that not so? Bernice?
Yes, that's what it will make it so nice if we have the genomic inbreeding, because that you can have animals that's unrelated, but that are actually more inbred or more related to each other than that forceps can be. And the only way to know that is by using the genomic inbreeding.
Thanks, Bernice.
Great. Now we're going over to Robin's question. She would like to know, what is the plan to feed phenotypic information back into the system if milk recording or other registration participation remains low? I don't know, maybe Bobby van der Westhuizen, would you like to elaborate on that?
So the question is, what is the plan? So the plan is that we are continuously and we are currently working on mechanisms to include more phenotypical data within the system. Traditionally, up till now, milk recording was only based on the taking of a milk sample. We have moved away from that, as we don't say that is not important. Of course, it is the whole idea for milk recording is taking a sample and get it analyzed for solids and somatic cell counts and MUN for feeding management purposes. But we also now includes only dairy farms which have an electronical milking machines that gather data on the farm. So we are currently busy installing software that will in the future on a weekly basis sync data from the farm back onto the databases for genetic purposes and management purposes. So we are continuously working on methods to make it more easier for farmers to participate and gather information.
Okay, Robin said a thumbs up, so I take it your question was answered. And okay, the next one comes again from Matthew. Can we hear a little bit more about the size of the reference population? I think Dr. Bernice has told us quite a bit about that, but if you'd like to elaborate a little bit more about that, Dr. Bernice?
Okay, currently we have for the Jerseys 1,465 genotypes and for the Holsteins 1,813. So we surpassed the golden rule of having 1,000 genotypes to implement genomic selection. I know it's still very low numbers compared to overseas reference populations, but this is a start and we really hope that the breeders will take this tool and will contribute to their own genomic databases, and that we will have support from the semen agents selling semen in South Africa.
Thank you, Dr. Bernice. Maybe you'd like to take the next one as well from Dr. Esty. Is it possible, from Professor Esty, is it possible to access genotypes from international sires used by the South African farmers to add to the South African reference population?
Yes, that's certainly something we hope that will happen. We tried previously to enter into international collaborations, which we did succeed with Ireland. So we did share genotypes from Holsteins with Ireland. And we hope that this will also happen with other populations.
Thank you, Dr. Bernice. The next question is from Rob. Evening, everyone. If I'm correct, testing is done in Ireland. Why Ireland specifically? Are Irish cows part of the reference population? How big is South Africa's reference population? We've just dealt with that one. How far are we from being able to test locally? And can Unistel not do this for us? Dr. Bobby van der Westhuizen, please, would you handle this one?
Okay, thank you. I think we only do the genotyping in Ireland on the moment because as a service provider, they have provided us with the best cost option. So as all of you know that the current commercial 50K bovine chips are not uniform, but there's a lot of SNPs that is the same for all the commercial chips on the market. The biggest things that changes is probably the single gene information. Some of them are more available than on others ones. So it's a question of where's the best price for where you can do your genotype. The information coming from the lab are the same if I do it in Ireland or I do it in the US. The information coming back is the same. So it's purely a decision on costs. The question of Unistel. Unistel up till now they only have procured a SNP array machine the last couple of months, and we work closely with Unistel to develop this South African based chip that will be used. So in the future, it could be that we do the genotyping at Unistel, and it's not necessary to take it abroad. So Rob, I hope that answers your question. So we don't use the Irish database or the reference of the Irish. We use purely the South African base. We only do the genotyping in the lab in Ireland, and they send us back the raw results, and then all is been estimated and done in South Africa. And it is just that there wasn't a service provider in South Africa up till now that could have performed that part for us. So yeah, hopefully in the future we can do it locally.
Bobby, can I just ask a question?
Yes, surely.
Go ahead.
Well, why was the decision made to do a 50 K chip and not maybe do a 9K at a cheaper cost and just get the ball rolling a bit faster?
Rob, I think because we need to build the reference population, we have choose to rather to use the 50,000 markers to have more SNPs that covers a bigger part of the genome than only maybe a 7K or a 9K. So it is fine if you have a reference, a well-established reference population in a country, then you can use a little bit a cheaper option to use a 7 or a 9K for females animals maybe. But for this purpose that we have was in the process of building reference populations, we have chosen not to do that because we were also with international colleagues that have established reference populations in Europe and in Canada, for instance. Also have advised us when we have commenced with genomic selection in South Africa 8 years back, rather to make a bigger investment in terms of the 50K, and once there is a well-established reference population for the South African population, then one can use a cheaper with lesser SNPs for a more economical service.
All right, and then animals that have been genomically tested in the States and Canada, I mean, the information is available already. Can that information not be used for EBVs, or what can we do with that information?
So basically what we need is we need the SNP profile of the genomic profile of the animals being genotyped in the US to include within our single-step genetic evaluation. So and we can do that if you send if the farmer did genotype his or her animals in the States or in Canada or wherever, and that farmer can present us with the genomic profile, the markers, then we just include it, and then you can get the South African GBVs on a South African scale from the single step analysis.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Last question comes from, I think, the other Rob. Is it possible to include economics and genetics? I think, Dr. Japie van der Westhuizen, and if you'd like to end off the evening with that last question, please.
Yes, Rob. I think that's exactly what one tries to achieve with if you followed what Chanel was presenting. You know, that graph that with the pie graph, that's exactly what one wants to do. So the principle, that's the principle of a breeding objective. So-called ERTs, you know, where you use a lot of inputs and obviously the outputs of a system to establish breeding objectives. And that by developing that, you obviously have to account for what you get for your product, your milk, for example, but also the cost of raising a calf, with the effect of 1 day of in calving interval or lactation length or longevity, and all that then is taken into consideration in terms of a selection objective. So, and obviously in terms of the genetic part, you also need to know what the genetic variance or the breeding value variance would be for a specific trait, but also the genetic correlation amongst those traits to establish the overall objective. And that can vary from farm to farm. I mean, if you, for example, would be a cheesemaker, that could be different to somebody that's being paid for a product in terms of, let's say, fresh milk or milk being used differently. But I think some of the principles remain in terms of fertility, longevity, udder health. That would be things that will be something on its own. Maybe one should, in a South African context, we should think maybe from Studbook's perspective to have a similar type of webinar in future, that we just talk about that very important aspect, because I think that's maybe one of the biggest problems in terms of ranking animals according to your needs and the way that you want to select. And it's usually on the bull side, it's a pull action. Obviously, you look for the best you can get in the world, and but on the female side, it's a push action where you cull at the bottom end. So I think, and that should be the same. You can't select bulls on a different with a different breeding objective than your females. Then you're selecting two different directions. So maybe I'm not answering your question 100%, but yes, it should end up. It's no use if you have a lot of traits and properties with very accurate genomic breeding values, and you don't know how to combine them in a universal breeding objective related to the profitability of your enterprise.
I don't know if anybody else has any more questions. You're free to quickly throw in another one if there is any. Otherwise, I think Dr. van der Westhuizen will then announce to us the two winners of our question competition, should I say.
I like the previous time, Talia. I don't know. I think it's appropriate that we allow for two people to each be able to genotype one of their animals through Studbook. I don't know. You guys must assist me there. I thought Matthew asked the most questions, so maybe that would be my one choice, but one of my colleagues could maybe throw in somebody else, please. Between you and Talia, between you and Surieta, you make the pick.
Yeah, I've just seen Surieta's also answering me. Yeah, we had Pete that had the most questions, and maybe Rob with the most tricky ones. Surieta?
Okay, let's just because just because you surpassed the Afrikaans launch, let's give them all. So tonight we'll have three winners then.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Matthew, Pete, and Rob. Thank you for that. Talia, I think I would really like. We ended up with 20, and which is I think after 2 hours is not too bad. I would have liked. Some to stay on, but we're also typing this, so we'll put this on YouTube, the whole thing, so that you can reference back to that as well. I don't know if you would like to close the evening, Talia. Thanks for your assistance, and all my colleagues. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So Talia, you can say the last few words, and then I'll stop the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to everyone who stayed on to the end. Thank you from all my colleagues, and we really had enjoyed doing this with you guys. It's very informal. It was just you really make a discussion out of this, and thank you for your questions. Greatly appreciated, and we really look forward to hearing a little bit more from you after this, because I'm sure if you wait a little bit, you're going to think of a few more things and a few more questions, and we are there to assist you with any questions that you have going forward. So I hope you all have a lovely evening, and keep warm and keep safe and healthy. And we'll hopefully see you guys soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.